Hi, my name is Scott. In the last episode I said I hate the rankings I do at the end of these things. I'm going to do it on this one because I have thoughts. Let's get started. Winchester is a horror movie starring Jason Clarke and Helen Mirren. How in the hell did they get Helen Mirren in this thing? Whatever pays your rent, Helen. This movie is super disappointing because the source material, if you want to call it that, is so great. The movie is about Lady Winchester, the wife of the man who created the Winchester Firearms Company. When she inherited the company, she was the wealthiest woman in the world, and she bought a house, and she felt like the house was haunted by the dead soldiers and people that were killed by the firearms company she owned. So, to silence these spirits, the house was under construction 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. For 20 years. It's a real place. It's in California. It's now a tourist attraction, of course, but this is a real story that really happened. So I was really hoping when they announced that this film was going to be made that it'd be a biopic about Sarah Winchester. There's a lot of material here that they could have pulled from. They could have talked about mental illness and how that not only takes a toll on the person that it's affecting, but the family members around her and the workers that have to build this house over a series of years. But nope, they made it into a horror movie. And it's a horror movie that starts with some pretty great atmosphere. The early 1900s are always pretty atmospheric when you put them on film. So I thought, oh, maybe this won't be so bad. And then it just becomes a jump scare fest. I put on Facebook after I got done watching this film that I don't think we're raising a group of horror fans. We're raising a group of people that like to be startled. We saw this with Creep on one of our prior episodes. It's easy to startle someone when you bring the soundtrack down and make it quiet, and then all of a sudden it's very loud. That's easy. What's hard is building atmosphere and terror. And this movie just doesn't do it. Helen Mirren, to her credit, does not chew the scenery in this movie. It's not a hammy performance. It's a legitimate attempt at bringing a character to life. And the same thing goes for Jason Clarke, who feels like he's some sort of a quack, but he's a psychiatrist who's brought in to diagnose Lady Winchester. So the performances are halfway decent, it's just this movie's a jump scare fest, and then in its third act gets completely silly. And I can't talk about what I want a movie to be, I have to talk about what a movie is. And in this case, this movie is tedious and not as good as it could have been. Molly's Game is the directorial debut of writer Aaron Sorkin, who also wrote the screenplay for this movie, stars Jessica Chastain as Molly Bloom. She started as a poorly paid assistant in Hollywood, but she started managing her boss's poker games, and over time she started running some of the biggest poker games in the United States. And the movie starts with her being arrested at the hands of the FBI and having to find a lawyer so that she can defend herself in court. Although she's been dormant for 2 years, she's still being brought up on charges as part of a RICO case. And in flashback, we see her work her way up the ladder. This movie's pretty long, but I never felt it drag. It has a good pace to it. At times, while I was watching it, I thought this feels kind of like American Psycho. Which seems like a weird comparison until you realize that Molly Bloom in this movie is very detail-oriented. She knows everything about every situation she's in. Jessica Chastain in the lead role is great as Molly Bloom. Very focused, very determined performance, but vulnerable at the time she needs to be, which is mostly towards the end of the story. Idris Elba plays her lawyer, and he's freaking great. He's got a monologue in this movie that goes on for a solid, 2-3 minutes, which is great. Kevin Costner also shows up in a few scenes in this movie, and he has one scene towards the end of the film, which is amazing. If you've ever seen a movie written by Aaron Sorkin, you know what to expect here. It's got a momentum to it. It keeps building and moving and building and moving. It's got that fast wit and snappy dialogue. At times very funny, at times very heartbreaking, incredibly entertaining film, well shot by Sorkin in his feature debut. I look forward to seeing more movies directed by this guy. He can obviously do the writing thing, but it's good to see him directing. The Hustle stars Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson. And it sucked. They're both con women who team up to con a series of men, and it becomes a competition when a Silicon Valley app creator comes into the fold to see who can get $500,000, I think, out of him. It may be one of the most unfunny movies I've seen in a long time. It has an air of trying way too hard, but also at the same time not trying hard enough. It is tedious and groan-inducing, and I wanted it to end as quickly as possible. So, while I was watching this movie, I was reminded of a quote from Roger Ebert. It was his review of the movie North, and the quote is as follows. "I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience-insulting moment of it. Hated the sensibility that thought anyone would like it. Hated the implied insult to the audience by its belief that anyone would be entertained by it." The thing is, it's a remake of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which is already entertaining, so just go watch that. This movie sucked. So much so that I'm doing this segment one more time so I can put it at number 3. Screw you, The Hustle, you sucked. Oh, Molly's Game. And what was the other one? I can't even remember. Oh yeah, Winchester. And that's it for this episode. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time. Don't watch The Hustle.